Hey, everybody. Welcome to Noticeably Invisible. My name is Dave. I'm your host for the show, and I'm joined here with a special friend of mine,
Hi,
Michael Olson.
Michael.
Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about some of your interests and kind of your hobbies.
Okay, well, I am a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And I am also interested in lost media.
Okay. That is something that I think a lot of people may not know what it is. I know the first time that you brought it to my attention, I didn't really know what it was, but then after you discussed it with me, we were able to both kind of identify a bunch of examples of things that we already knew about. But how would you define lost media to someone who doesn't know what it is?
Lost media is referring to either like a TV show, a movie, a video game, or something like that that is not accessible to the public in any way that people are trying to find.
Yeah. So in many ways, it's something that was created, but now is lost, right?
Yeah.
And there is a community of people I've learned from you that are actively trying to find things that have been lost and put them on like YouTube or websites.
Yeah.
Is that right? And one of the things that you enjoy doing is kind of going on these deep dives, and especially things that like remind you of your childhood, would you say?
Yeah.
Any good examples of lost media that's been found?
One that's been found?
Sure.
Well, let me think for a sec. Well, in terms of one that's been found, there existed for a while an episode of Sesame Street that came out during the 70s that was a crossover with The Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch of the West ends up losing her broom in Sesame Street, and she has to talk with all of the characters in Sesame Street in order to find it. And when it first aired in the 70s, kids were really scared of the Wicked Witch.
Yeah.
Which caused parents to complain to the network that aired on about it, which caused it to be pulled from airing after airing just once.
Yeah.
And the only evidence we had of its existence was various newspaper articles that talked about it. And well, I don't exactly remember when it was found. It was found, but somebody had managed to attain a copy of it from the Library of Congress and leaked it online on YouTube.
Yeah, cool. Very topical too, because Wicked just came out, right? So people are definitely talking about the Wizard of Oz, but it's interesting to hear at that time the reason why it was taken off.
Yeah.
And now currently, is there something that you guys, the community of lost media individuals, they're looking for? Because I know at times you'll come in and you'll tell me about this new thing that everybody's looking for. Is there anything right now?
Well, if there's any search I feel like has had a significant amount of stuff that's come out from it now, it would be the one that's currently ongoing, that's trying to find a lost college short film produced in the 60s called Uncle Walt.
Okay.
That was an animated dark parody of Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney.
Yep.
That was only screened once and has since remained lost, as the only proof we had of its existence for so long was some articles online talking about it. But sometime this year, this website was saying in celebration of Mickey Mouse coming onto the public domain.
Yes.
That this company was going to release a bunch of vintage old Mickey Mouse shorts in a compilation disc on DVD, and one of them was going to be Uncle Walt.
Okay.
And however, it ultimately didn't actually end up getting released with Uncle Walt because of how controversial the contents of the short apparently is. Apparently it has racism and it has sexual nature in it.
Okay.
And a lot of people were very upset about that. And then ironically at the same time, an eBay listing auction of Uncle Walt came out that showed various screenshots of it that we've never seen before.
Huh.
There was like no visual evidence of his existence for so long that we managed to see various screenshots of it that were taken from a film reel of it.
Yeah.
And at the very last second of the auction, somebody bought it, and yet nobody knows who that person was.
Oh, geez, so now it's lost again.
Yeah, and yeah, so we kind of missed our chances twice of finding it.
Yeah.
Though if there's one thing I do think that is meaningful that we've gotten from it are the screenshots that we have from it, which I think is pretty great, a great find from it at least.
Yeah.
Because for like decades that this has been lost, we haven't had any visual visuals for it.
Sure.
Even though I know a lot of people, including myself, would wish it had been the actual short itself that got found.
Right. But it just kind of gives you hope that eventually somebody will somebody will have something.
Yeah, it shows that there is evidence that people have copies of it, even though in the case of the eBay one, it was bought by someone who nobody knows, and nobody knows if that person even knows how valuable it is.
Right. They're not part of this lost media community.
No.
Now, if someone like were listening to you describe this and they're like, oh, that sounds fascinating, or I too want to learn about lost media and kind of go on these hunts, where would they go to like learn more about this? Where do you get your information from?
Normally I either watch YouTube videos of it online, or I go to the Lost Media Wiki site.
Yeah.
That has like a whole, like dozens and thousands of pages dedicated to anything that you could possibly imagine.
And I believe you've shared that with me, and we've gone through that a little bit.
Of people who talk about it on Lost Media Wiki.
Sure.
About that stuff too.
Now, we had the idea one day that we were going to do our own lost media search, right?
Yeah.
So because we're like, why constantly, look at other people's searches? Why don't we conduct our own? And you had this awesome idea of a lost media, or something that was hard for you to find, and you weren't even sure if it really existed, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit about that search we did?
All right. So to add some context, when I was in elementary school, at the school I went to in Agawam, Massachusetts, we would have this event every summer of us going outside, and all of our parents and whatnot would watch us do a little bit of a concert of us singing various songs of a certain theme. The one that we did possibly in 2006 or so was themed after silly kids songs. And every music class at that time we would practice for it. And the one that I had always remembered that I had a bit of a negative experience with was Hello Mother, Hello Father, a song which what should I say? That it bothered me when I first listened to it due to how off-putting, kind of sad it was sounding.
Yeah.
Compared to the other songs that I had heard at the concert, like one of them was like Flying Purple People Eater.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
Yeah.
And I had always remembered the song for how much it bothered me back then. And yet the version of that song that we were singing to at the concert was completely different from the one that is most nobly found online on YouTube.
Right.
The one that I remembered listening to at elementary school was of kids choir singing the song instead of the adult who made the song himself during the 60s, whatnot.
So you shared with us the information,
Yeah.
And then you and I started our own search, right?
Yeah.
And I think it took us about 3 attempts, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not even, before we were able to identify
Yeah.
the song. And then we found it and we realized, all right, this is no longer lost media because now we found it.
Yeah.
But it actually did take a little bit. It
Yeah, it
was
did.
not an easy thing to access.
No, it wasn't.
We had to kind of go on a little bit of a deep dive to try to figure out, and we went through some hints. So it's interesting. I think for me, the experience that I enjoyed the most was taking clues. Like you shared that Purple People Eater song, so we knew it was maybe on the same CD
Yeah.
as that. So there was all these little hints that we had, and finally we located the origin of that song.
Yeah.
And we decided that we had no longer had a lost media
Yeah.
issue with that song.
No
Does it
problem.
bother you as much today now, the song, as it did back then?
Uh, well, now that I know that it's not meant to be taken extremely seriously of a song, I guess it doesn't bother me that much.
Sure.
Knowing that I'm an adult now.
Yeah. It's funny because when we shared with your mom that we had done the search, that's when I found out that that song bothered you, because that wasn't the first thing you told me. And then we told your mom that we did the search for it. She goes, "But you hated that song." And you're like, "Yeah, but I still wanted to find it." So, so it's interesting. Why do you think you like lost media so much?
Because I guess it depends on what the topic is. If it's like based on a series or creator that I'm familiar with, there's like almost like a lost media for like almost anything you could imagine.
Sure, I bet there is.
You know? So what was the
It
question?
piques your interest,
Yeah,
basically.
it piques my interest.
Do you think it connects to anything else that makes you like it? Like, there's a little bit of a nostalgia based in it, right?
Curiosity. Like
Curiosity.
sometimes it could be like an early version of something that I know so well.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a guess of one more thing too. I think you kind of like the idea that there's a community of people.
Yeah.
And being a part of the lost media community, right?
Yeah.
It kind of feels good. And there's forums where you could communicate with people if you wanted to, or you can just kind of watch other people's communication.
Yeah.
But it feels like a group activity, even if you're doing it solo, right?
Yeah.
You also said that you're a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks ago, you brought in a bunch of your illustrations.
Yeah.
And it was really blowing me away. Like, you're really good. What got you into cartoons in general?
Probably a lot of the animated films that I watched when I was younger.
Sure. I know that there was one in particular that really piqued your interest. You want to share that?
My mom would always tell me that the very first animated movie, but also the very first movie in general that I had emotional attachment to when I was younger, was the very first Toy Story movie from 1995.
Yeah. And why do you think that one was so meaningful to you?
Probably because it covers themes of abandonment and whatnot, something which I really resonated with.
Yeah. It just spoke to you.
Yeah.
And it really connected with you. And then you started to like really get involved in like learning about not just how cartoons are made, but like the history of them, and also like the history of the studios that make movies. Like the knowledge that you share with me all the time is pretty amazing. Why is all that so interesting to you?
Because I like to have context to it, you know?
Yeah.
I like learning new things about stuff that I grew up on or just watch today in general.
You shared with me something interesting, and just to kind of highlight like your knowledge that you have around this, you shared with me how initially Disney kind of wasn't wanting to go in the Pixar route, right?
Yeah.
And then they had a change of heart, and maybe you can put that into words better than
So
me.
basically, back when Pixar was new and they were an independent animation company, they had a lot of tension between them and the Walt Disney Company, which was their main distributor. I don't remember exactly the specifics of what caused them to be so tension between them, but
At some point, Disney kind of had to go the route of Pixar because their movies weren't doing so well.
Yeah, during the 2000s.
Yeah.
DreamWorks and Pixar were both on the rise during that time,
Sure.
and that, you know, computer animation was seen as a very new venture for a lot of people at the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of Disney films during the early 2000s weren't doing well because of the fact that Pixar and DreamWorks were outshining them
Yeah.
commercially.
Do you think that that's kind of happening again now with this new introduction to AI and all the ways that that can kind of like create animation and things like that?
Yeah, I do.
So do you think that we're going to see more AI use in movies, or do you think they're going to kind of continue to limit that use?
I hope they don't use more AI
Yeah.
because I feel like there's a lot of worth in what a human mind can come up with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where like I think that speaks a lot to like you as a person too, because like when you just start to create, you let your mind go.
Yeah.
And you create things that, you know, maybe the person that's talking to you wouldn't necessarily think you were thinking about. But then you come out with these cartoon pictures and it's like, oh, all right, that's cool. So you're a very, very creative person.
Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to talk to you about was being on the autism spectrum. So that's something that we've talked about at times. What does that mean to you, being on the autism spectrum?
It means that I get to see the world in a unique way,
Yeah,
compared to other people who don't.
Sure. So talking about that, what do you see as some of the strengths of being on the spectrum?
That you can excel at creative thinking, and that you can find solutions to things that nobody else could.
Sure.
Even people with autism themselves differentiate from one another.
Yeah.
So they can see a solution to things that not even each other can come up with.
Right.
You know?
That really highlights the individuality of people, and to like put exactly. And we can't really put everyone under the same blanket because like you said, some so and so might see it differently than this person. I think it also is a huge strength of it. It also is this like bank of knowledge you're able to collect. Like the fact that you can like do deep dives and then be able to recall that information in a conversation like this or any other conversation you have is pretty amazing.
Thank you.
What are some of the challenges though?
The challenges
that come with being on the spectrum?
Meaning that sometimes I can think of a lot of stuff at once, and I guess it's probably because how should I say this? Are you referring to problems that can come with having autism?
Yeah. Like anything that you feel is a challenge that's due to the fact that you're on the spectrum.
Probably noise sensitivity.
Oh yeah.
Having heightened senses. You know, having certain tastes that affect the food you eat and the things you hear.
Sure.
And back when I was younger, I had a very high diversion to coughing, as it was like very loud and unexpected thing for me to hear.
Yeah.
And it often caused me to get very upset when I was in school because there was so much anxiety. Back then, I had a lot of pressure on myself to succeed.
Yeah. That's still something that you feel at times, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Not as bad as it used to be, though.
You've developed strategies to handle it. We actually were just talking about that before we started to record. I cleared my throat and you made a joke. And that's kind of your strategy to help yourself calm.
Yeah, using jokes.
Yeah. You said, can I repeat what you said?
Sure.
So I cleared my throat suddenly, and you said, don't go dying on me, otherwise we won't be able to record this episode. So and I kind of pointed out, I was like, that's such a great strategy, because that's something I knew that you struggle with in the past, as far as when people do that and it's not expected. So that's a great example, and I think everything you just said there was really great examples. Has there ever been a time where you feel like somebody treated you differently because you were on the spectrum?
Yeah, I feel like they have.
You have any examples that come to mind of that?
I feel like a lot of the teachers that I had back when I was in Massachusetts
Yeah.
somewhat treated me like I wasn't really a person. Like
Yeah.
they treated me as if I was somewhat not smart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something you've shared with me a number of times is that feel. And I think it's like in some ways, I know you now that like you're an adult, you know differently, but sometimes it comes up again, that negative thought about yourself,
Mhm,
because you'll share that at times and it's like, where did that come from? But then I think like when you're feeling pretty calm, you're pretty aware that
mhm,
you're a smart guy, right?
mhm.
But when you're feeling low, it comes up again, those negative thoughts, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Is it something that you feel you've has gotten better as you've gotten older as far as being able to explain to people
yeah,
or people like telling people when they're not treating you correctly?
yeah,
Is that still a challenge though at times?
yeah, it is.
Yeah. That's something you've been working on a lot,
Mhm.
right? Um, so Michael, I was wondering, was there anything else you wanted to share with this audience?
Like
And anything at all?
anything at all?
Yeah,
Uh, about myself?
sure.
Hmm.
Wait, let me ask you a question, and maybe that will make it easier. If you were talking to someone who is in your position,
Mhm.
they have a lot of interests, um, but they also feel at times like people treat them differently,
Hmm.
but that they're smart underneath it all. They're bright people. What would you share with them to help them get through those challenges?
I would tell them to don't take it to heart when they do if they're not treated well.
Yeah.
I would tell them to well maybe if you can talk to them about that, maybe they'll be able to understand.
So helping people understand you better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, and hard at the same time.
Mhm.
One thing that always comes up when we talk is like this strong attachment you have to nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that was something I wanted to talk about briefly because nostalgia is big with me too. I have a lot of things from my past that,
Mhm.
as an adult, I still hang on to because they bring me joy.
Mhm.
What does nostalgia mean to you?
Means exploring things when you're older that exploring things that you experienced years ago in your life they had a strong attachment to, and then exploring them again years and years later when you're older and
Yeah.
being able to recognize why you were attached to that stuff back then to begin with.
I'm always fascinated to hear people's thoughts on why people like nostalgic things so much. What do you think we get out of nostalgia? Like, what feelings do you think it brings us?
Feelings of simpler time in your life.
Sure.
It brings up feelings of how you felt during that time, what things that you were going through,
Yeah.
and how probably different that they are from where you are now.
Hmm. Do you think it brings a sense of comfort?
It does. I think it does.
Yeah. And it maybe even safety for some people.
Yeah.
Like there's some things that I'm nostalgic for that actually remind me of like sick days from school and sitting
Hmm.
home and feeling like, yeah, I don't feel well, but I also feel comfortable and safe because,
Yeah.
I'm at home and, my parents taking care of me and things like that.
Uh-huh.
So there's moments like that. Well, I appreciate that thought, Michael, and I appreciate you sharing so much about yourself.
Thank you.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to share Michael is very tired today
Yeah.
because as he explained to me before we recorded that he was up very late due to some issues in the house. So
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that you're constantly yawning or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I don't do that constantly.
Yeah, actually pretty much never.
Yeah.
So today we're seeing you in a little bit of rare form, but you still spoke very well today,
Yeah.
considering you're tired. And
Thank you.
I appreciate you, Michael. And I have to say, getting to know you has helped me learn about your interests, but not just your interests. It's actually helped me learn a little bit about myself.
Mhm.
And like I just talked about with nostalgia, some of our conversations have actually made me think about myself and how nostalgia sets for me. So getting to know you has also been getting to know myself. So I appreciate you. And I hope that people actually will give a deep dive into some of the things that you're talking about, because I find them very fascinating.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for tuning in to Noticeably Invisible. We'll be back in a few weeks with a brand new episode. But if you're interested in getting to know more about Lost Media, Lost Media Wiki page is a great way, or just going on YouTube. But also, if you're interested in getting to know Michael a little bit better, maybe you can message us on our social media or on the YouTube page, and we can get Michael in touch with you if you want to chat about Lost Media, because I'm sure you'd be up for that, right?
Yeah, I would.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.